Hello, people. You're welcome to ProUp Masterclass. My name is Tola T.A. Alabi, and today I'm going to be talking a little bit about legacy, about leaving a legacy. Um, and this is something I was kind of thinking of about 2 days ago. Leaving a legacy, and I've spoken with so many people. I have this privilege because I consider it a privilege, the opportunity to talk with people every single day. I have people send me questions about their confusions and, about their lives, basically. I believe it's an incredible privilege to have someone willing or people that are willing to be vulnerable with you. I don't take it for granted. Um, and I have people reach out to me. And to be honest with you, a lot of people are caught in this web of depression, mostly because they don't know where their life is going. Um, I can't tell you how many times I've had someone saying, "I just don't know where my life is going. It just seems like my life is not going anywhere." A lot of people are caught up in that. Where is my life going? You know, so their inability to answer where their life is going, where their life would end up, the legacy they are going to leave is a big point, cause of concern in a lot of people's lives, and it causes people a lot of sadness. At least from my observation, when it comes to interacting with people, this need to be remembered in a particular way and to reach a particular destination is a big burden that people carry. And I'm not even exempting myself from this because about 2 days ago, I was caught in that rut of thinking, Tola, where is your life going? Where's your life going? Um, what's going to be your legacy when you leave this earth? How are people going to remember you? And I remember taking some time just in the evening 2 days ago, and I was just lying down and thinking, and thinking of my career and thinking of what has happened in my life leading up till now. And I'm like, Tola, do people remember you, or do people have a knowledge of you that you want them to have of you, a perception of you that you want them to have of you? Um, and I was wondering, what's people's perception of me if people were to use adjectives to to describe me, or to use particular words, particular nouns to describe me. Um, what would they say? Would they say, "Oh, he's a nice guy. He's a thinker, a designer, a creative, a teacher"? What would they say? You understand? And it became a concern for me to try to get people to think of me in a particular way. And I spent that evening really thinking, this is how I want people to think of me. Now, how can I foster this this thought in people's minds? How can I make people think of me this way? How can I make people think of me? And I got, before I knew it, I realized I was in this strategy mode to think, how can people think of me as a credible this? How can I be the go-to person when it comes to this? How can I occupy this space in people's minds? I know this is what I've helped people do over a long period of time. And I know we call it branding. I call it branding, having to own a particular niche space in people's minds, carve that space. So when they think of that, they think of you. And then I found myself trying to self prescribe how I can enforce a thought in people's minds about how I want them to perceive me. And then that led me to a way of thinking, oh, what legacy do I want to leave behind? And I remember when I started writing on Twitter, um, my mind was like, I wanted something, I wanted something I could keep behind, something that people in 50 years' time could read, 100 years' time could read, and something I could leave behind. So for me, longevity has always been a point of attraction for me. And so I've always thought, oh, I want to do something that my kids can look at and say, my father did this, or my father did that, or this is work from my father, work from my great grandfather. You understand? I wanted to leave something behind for the next generation. So I found myself also thinking of how can I establish my work in a way whereby I can leave it for generations to come. And as I thought, my spirit told me, Tola, you're bothering yourself too much with things that are out of your control. And it was so clear to me when the spirit ministered that to me. You see, that's why I really tell people that life is spiritual. And I feel a lot of sympathy for people that don't acknowledge the spiritual, because you lock yourself out of a lot of knowledge. A lot of knowledge. You are missing out on so much knowledge about yourself. And so much clarity is found in spirituality. So that day, I had this spiritual awakening. And he ministered to me. He said, Tola, you're bothering yourself with things that are out of your control. That there are two major things that human beings bother themselves with that is totally out of their control. Number one thing is how people perceive you. It says you do not control how things move through people's minds. That's the first thing. You have no control about how things move through people's minds. Number two thing is you have no control how things move through time. You have no control how things move through this entity called time. No control. And I spent some more time meditating on those words that were ringing in my mind. See, I have no control over how things move through the people's minds, and I have no control how things move through time. And what does that mean? It means that the human being has no control how the other human being thinks about them. You have no control what they think about you. As much as you want to believe you have a control, you have no control. It's always going to be a burden to try to get people to think in a particular way that aligns with your thought, because it's out of your control. You have no control. How people think about you, you have no control. How long people think about you, what they choose to hold on to, what they choose to remember about you, you have no control. And those are the two things that we consider as legacy. How people see us and how they remember us. That's what we call a legacy. How they see us now and what they remember after we are gone that they still hold on to. That's what we call the legacy. And what I got that day is that you have no control over the legacy you would leave. No control. I know some people might not agree, because I struggled with this for a while. But then it became clear to me. It's an illusion to think you can do something by yourself to make people think in a particular way, to make people see things in a particular way. You can try, but you can never open a person's eyes when they are closed. The opening of a person's eyes is a spiritual thing, and I'll come to that. But you have no control over it. And you have no control what you're going to leave behind. No control. No control over your legacy. The only thing you have control over is what you think and what you are doing right now. You have control over how you perceive yourself and your own thoughts, and you have control over the activity that is given to you to do right now. But how far what that activity would mean tomorrow, how long it will last, you have no control over that. You have no control over that. You have no control. So I'll put it this way. You have control over looking at a field and thinking, I want to cultivate this field. And then in your mind, you see a field full of corn. You have control over that in your mind. But you have no control over how the next person will see that field of corn. You can try to paint it to them. If they are not going to see it, they wouldn't see it. All they will see is a barren field. They wouldn't see it, a field of corn that you see in your mind. You understand? It's very, very hard to convince people to see what you see in your mind the way you see it. And secondly, when you start planting the corn, the only thing you have control over is that moment that you put that corn seed in the ground. You have no control over whether that corn seed would sprout up with a stem in a few days' time. You can't control it. You don't know. You can't say that for sure. All you have control over is your ability to put a seed in the ground. But you cannot say that that seed will grow in 2 days or 5 days. I remember there was a time my kids had a project and told my daughter to go and plant a bean seed. It was a project, and so we took the bean seed. Beans very, 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 very easy to plant. Just put them in the ground before you know it starts. So we got a cup, we put soil there, and we put a seed in. And this is something we've done before. I had done it when I was a kid, and that day we did it. So we put the seed in the soil, and we covered it up. And the next day we looked at it, nothing. We're like, okay, maybe it's just. Second day, by the second day, you're already expecting it to start, breaking loose. Nothing. Third day, nothing. Fourth day, nothing. Fifth day, nothing. And that thing was in that soil for weeks, and nothing came out. Absolutely nothing. We had to throw it away and do it all over again. For some reason, that seed did not sprout. We had no control over it. The only thing we could do was put the seed in the ground at the time when we did it. And we went back, we watered it. The only thing we could do was water it for that day. But that we couldn't beat our chest to say, in 2 weeks' time, we would have a plant. Because we never had a plant. Nothing ever came out. By the time I threw it out, the seed was still the way it was. Nothing had changed about it. We have no control over how things move through time. What you have control over is your own thoughts, how you see things in your mind, and you have control over what you're doing now. A legacy is out of your control. This burden we carry about what legacy we will leave is always going to be an elusive one, because you have no idea. You can guess and assume, but then it might never be that way. Just like we guessed and we kind of assumed that in 4 days' time we'll have a plant come out of the seed, but never happened. In a week it never happened. Never, for some reason. And that's how life is. The gift you have are the thoughts you have in your head. It's not really how many people align with that thought or how many people you can sell that thought to. You see, a lot of times we think success comes by being able to propagate our thoughts and our values. No, the real success is in you understanding that thought and that value that you have. That other people understand it is out of your control. Out of your control. The real gift you have is that activity you are doing right now. Right now. That's the gift. That's as good as it gets for you. Every other thing is a hope. Hope. Your hands are you're totally surrendered. You can't do anything. Like right now, I'm recording this podcast. This is as good as it gets for me. As good. Right now that I'm saying these words is as good as it gets. I cannot even guarantee that I would finish this podcast. But as I'm talking about it now, this is as good as it gets. I cannot guarantee that that 100 people will listen to this podcast. I cannot even guarantee that 10 or 1 will even listen to it. I cannot guarantee. All I can guarantee right now is that I'm saying these words. I'm choosing to say these words. But how far these words would go, I cannot guarantee. All I can guarantee right now is that I understand what I'm saying. But that you listening to it right now would understand and align with what I'm saying, I cannot guarantee. Some people will listen to this podcast and put it off right here and just say, I don't understand what this thing is too abstract what he's saying. They don't understand. But I understand what I'm saying clearly in my head. That's as good as it gets for me. For somebody else to say, I understand what Mr. Tola is saying, is a gift. It is a spiritual gift. We take it for granted a lot that we say things and somebody agrees. That we say things and somebody says, I agree and this is valuable to me, is such a miracle. It's a miracle. It is what we call a spiritual unveiling. A spiritual unveiling. That what you think in your mind, somebody else can see it and understand it. It's a spiritual unveiling. You see, for those that know me, I have been a logo designer. I was a logo designer for a very long time. For a very long time. And I still do logo designer, but not just as often, you understand? But for logo design, very long time. And for me, one of the most amazing things about logo design, about the process of logo design then, was when I had an idea and I worked on it and I could see clearly the meaning of that idea. For me, it was very clear. It made sense. And I sent it to the client and the client understood it. And the client said, I love this idea. I love this logo. It makes so much sense to me. It always brought in me a sense of joy. And I always wonder what that joy was. I'm like, how? Like that I could do something and somebody else somewhere totally understood it and got it. I knew it wasn't something ordinary. I knew it was a privilege. I knew it was a spiritual thing. That you can think something and somebody else's mind is open to seeing that thing the way you see it is an incredible thing. So I always had so much joy when I had a logo approved. When the person was like, I see this idea and it makes so much sense. It's a spiritual thing, it's a spiritual unveiling for you to think something and somebody else sees what you're thinking. Almost the way you see it. It's incredible. And that's the same thing with love or falling in love. It's the same thing. Seeing somebody and thinking they are beautiful or seeing someone and thinking they are good looking is such an amazing connection. Because the truth is, you can think you're beautiful. You can see yourself as beautiful. But the ability for other people to think of it and see you as beautiful is something we think we have control over. But you don't. No matter how much skincare you do, what you do with your hair, somebody will look at it and they would not be able to see through it to see any beauty. They wouldn't see any beauty there. Nothing. I don't know if you've ever seen someone who spends so much time on some skin regimen, some beauty regimen, and you still look at them and like, what's so beautiful about them? And you see another person that doesn't spend that much time and just like, wow, she's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Because for that person, that spiritual veil has been removed for you. And that's why they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And that means that beauty is only beauty when your eyes have been opened to it. That's why what's beautiful to some people is not beautiful to some other people. Some people look and say, what is she doing with that guy? That guy is not handsome. Or what is he doing with that lady? She's not beautiful. To him, she's the most beautiful woman. Because his eyes have been opened. It's a spiritual thing. So if you're here today, you're listening, you're in a relationship, and you're in a relationship with a lady who you find beautiful, or a man who you find incredibly handsome, it's a spiritual connection. That you see the person as handsome. Some people see the person as incredibly ugly. But there's a veil that has been removed over your eyes to align with what that person truly has. The person has no control over it. It was God that took off that veil. So a lot of times, even in relationships, we try so hard to groom and position ourselves so that someone out there can see us and be attracted. But then it's totally out of your control. In fact, that person that you think will be attracted to you by seeing you at that party, the way you are all made up and all glammed up, might not even be attracted to you at the party. He might be attracted to you on that day when you just woke up and your hair is not combed and there's no makeup on your face. That's when the beauty comes out. Do you understand? You have no control. No control. No control. And we must all understand that. No control. So if you are dressing up and making up, do it for yourself. Do it so that you feel beautiful. But this illusion, look beautiful for yourself. Look beautiful for yourself. Do that skincare for yourself. Because the truth is, if you do it with an expectation that you can control, that the next person will think it is nice, you might be disappointed. Because then you realize you have no control over their perception of what you think is good makeup or what you think is good skin. And that's why people get so disappointed in love. They're like, I've invested so much in myself. I do this care, I do this, but then my husband still doesn't see it, or this person I'm trying to attract still doesn't see it. No, because number one, you must do it for yourself. Do it for yourself. Do it to feel beautiful with yourself. You have that much control about your perception. And leave the perception, that spiritual unveiling, to God in the eyes of the other person. And you will realize that it's not on the most glammed up day that your husband will see you and say, wow, you're so beautiful. Or that your wife will say, wow, I'm really an incredibly lucky woman to be with you. So whatever it is you are doing, you are your first validator. And your validation is mostly all the control you have. You have no control over how much external validation you will get. Have no control. No control. Do it for you. And I still talk about when I worked as a logo designer. A lot of times when I work on a logo, I do it to be happy with it first. When I'm happy with it, and I'm like, I hope this other person is happy with it. But then that I'm happy with it is my first satisfaction. That the other person, who is the client, is happy with it is the cherry on top. But first of all, you must work for yourself. And that's why it's not enough to do good, incredible, honorable work. Number one, it's incredible to do. It's better to do work that makes you happy. You understand? Work that you see as good. And leave the unveiling of whether any other person sees it as good in the hands of God. Because God is the only one that can unveil people's eyes to see good. There are a lot of things I've done in terms of either writing or artwork that I think this is really good and people will connect with it, and then nobody connects with it. Nobody. And that just humbles me to just realize it's not enough for me to think it is good, and by that virtue, every other person should think it. It's a privilege for even one other person to think it. That one more person thinks it is an incredible privilege that is out of my control. And the other thing that is out of your control is legacy. How long people would keep it for. How long people will honor it. That's what is called legacy. How long people would remember it is totally out of your control. It's out of your control. You see, I'm reading a book now. Well, I read a book. I finished it. It's called Life of the Stoics by a man called Ryan Holiday. And Ryan Holiday wrote this book, and it chronicles the life of Stoics. It's these early thinkers called Stoics. And it started with a man called Zeno, who came up with this movement. and it ends with a man called Marcus Aurelius, who was an emperor. And when I was reading the book, it kind of chronicles the life of people that have adopted this mentality of being a Stoic, and I think there are about almost 30 of them that he kind of writes about. And what's interesting is there are a number of them that had incredible thoughts and thought to themselves, I want my thoughts to outlive me. So they spent a lot of time writing their thoughts. They spent so much time writing their thoughts. And so a lot of them journaled and wrote books, because then that was the only way you could store stuff, with books. So a lot of them wrote books and journals and papers and things like that, and just wrote a lot of stuff so that they could archive them. And by so doing, they thought their thoughts would endure because they could archive them. But then as I read through it, there were a number of them that Ryan Holiday said he couldn't find their manuscripts anymore. Said they spent a lot of their life writing about their thoughts. But now, I don't know, I can't remember the year Ryan Holiday wrote this, but let's assume he wrote it in 2024. Now in 2024, they couldn't find a lot of what they had written because a lot had been destroyed, either by fires, by wars, by floods. They had been destroyed. And all they could salvage were just few pages of this lifetime of manuscripts written by these people. Few pages. And I thought to myself, this person that dedicated almost 50 years writing his thoughts, about 200 years later, all we can find is just half a page of what he thought he was saving. Half a page. Some of them, they couldn't find anything. All they could find was a reference that somebody else made about them. But their own original manuscript, they couldn't find it. And I thought to myself, how futile that we try to leave a legacy, but it's out of our control. Most of these guys, because they had the technology of writing and books then, that was the ultimate technology. Like, I've backed up this thing for life. Little did they know they weren't backing up anything. In the end, people still wonder, I wonder what he wrote in there. Isn't that the same way we do? Where we try to back up stuff today. I'm like, oh, let's put stuff on social media, put it up, because the internet never forgets and stuff. And if I put it on YouTube, my children will find. I used to have that mentality, and I still have it. I still struggle with that. Record it, put it up on Spotify and stuff like that. Put it up on your website, so that you can save these things. But then you never know. You never know what will squeeze its way through time. You never, ever know. And there's an interesting story in this book by Ryan Holiday called Lives of the Stoics, and it's about Marcus Aurelius. And Marcus Aurelius, I think, is by far one of the most popular of all the Stoics, and it's interesting that he's actually the most popular in today's world because of a book written by him called Meditations. Now, the interesting thing is that Marcus Aurelius never set out to write a book. He never set out to leave the legacy of his thoughts in a book. Never. Unlike the other Stoics that preceded him, they tried to leave that legacy in manuscripts and books, but he never tried to. So how did they come about this book called Meditations? Marcus Aurelius had a habit of journaling, and he journaled for himself. So whenever he was away at war, he would take time every night in his camp, in his tent, and he would write his thoughts. Not for anybody, but for himself, to clarify his thoughts. And at the end of his life, he had filled a lot of journals with his thoughts about things, different subject matters. And when he died, someone found that journal, and that journal has been able to move through time, even in today's world where it's published as a best-selling book. You see, Marcus Aurelius was not trying to keep his thoughts to go through time because he had little control on that. What he could do was journal every single day for himself. And now people are reading his thoughts. And one way or the other, his thoughts are beginning to give people clarity and a sense of direction. You see, it is those things that we try to keep, intentionally try to form a legacy with, that don't keep at the end of the day. Those are the things that don't keep. So what am I trying to say in this podcast? I'm trying to say make use of the gifts that you have. Those things you can actually control. What you think about yourself, what your values, what your beliefs are, forget about propagating them. Focus on you understanding them. Being appreciative of the fact that your own eyes are open to them. Number 2, enjoy those things you are able to do and stop thinking about how to form a legacy through them. Stop thinking about how to make them more enduring. It's a very, very hard thing to do because man always thinks about what he's going to leave behind. But the truth of the matter is man has no control about what people pick about you. Man has no control. No matter how popular something is today, you can hardly control whether it's going to be that popular in 5-10 years' time. I remember some days ago, I was in the car with my kids and a song came up on radio. It's a song by a group called P Square. Now, P Square were a very popular Nigerian group in the early 2000s/mid 2000s. P Square was incredibly popular. A set of twins that sang together, wrote songs together, incredible performers. And they were the music group to follow then. But I remember when the song came up in the car, I was driving my kids to school. And I told my kids, wow, do you know this song? This is P Square. And my kids were like, who is P Square? I'm like, P Square. You know the twins now, Peter and Paul. Like, we don't know them. And it just hit me. I'm like, a generation has come in my lifetime that doesn't know this group that seemed so big. My kids had no idea who they were, and they're like, Daddy, I'm like, this song sounds very old. We don't know who they are and stuff like that. Look, at that time when P Square was performing, it seemed like their songs will never be forgotten. But then just a few years later, my kids don't know their songs. It didn't endure for as much as the popularity that it had. You understand? The endurance of the song, the retention of the song isn't equal to how big it was then. So sometimes don't fool yourself that because something is so big and has gone viral now, it's going to last. No. Sometimes it's those little things that didn't make sense or were so popular at the time it was done that years later begin to make sense. You see, someone like Anne Frank, the young teenage Jewish girl who just wrote in a diary while hiding from the Nazis, wrote in a diary, not to be published or anything, just wrote her thoughts and experience every day hiding in a little small apartment. She wrote about it just for herself. Never thought that book would go through the 1940s, into the 50s, into the 60s, into the 2000s, till today. It's published as a book, best-selling book. She would never have thought. All she could do was write in a journal every day. You see, let's stop being strategic about how we want to keep a legacy, how we want to position ourselves in people's mind, what we want to leave behind, and just do what you are led to do today. Do that thing you are led to do without strategy. Do it for you. Do it for you first. Don't try to force it down people's throats. Don't try to make people see the value in it. You see the value and be happy of that gift of being able to see the value. I really hope someone is able to connect with what I'm saying today. I really hope someone's spiritual eyes are unveiled from this. But then I must be happy with the fact that I've been able to record this. Somebody saying they listened to this and it made sense to them. It's just a cherry on the cake. It's a cherry on the cake, but I don't take it for granted because it's out of my control. It means that something spiritually has aligned between me and that person that listens to this and said, this is what I need for today. But I must not fool myself thinking that the value of this thing is how many people feel like this was good content. The ultimate value of this thing is that I understood it and I decided in the now to record it. And let that be the way you live your life so that you can break free from the pressure of where is my life going.